Record. Okay, enjoy. Good luck. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome in. See you all trickling in through. Do introduce yourselves on the chat. You're probably experts by now, but don't forget to on the chat bit, click the drop down and change it to everyone so we can all see you. I'll type that in myself as well so you get it in writing. Don't forget to change the chat to everyone. There we go. Coming up. Okay, we've got Peterborough and Eastbourne in so far. I love the variety of locations. There's usually one wild card who's some far-flung place. Hi, Brenda. Bob, Janet in Windermere, you're close. I'm Kendall. Nice day today. I can still see people coming in, so I'll we'll hold on a minute before we get going. And as you may or may not know, this is the penultimate talk of the festival for the year. Not the last and definitely not the least. Today we're going to be hearing from David and Georgie and the Thighs of Steel organisation and one of their remarkable stunts that they pulled off. And I suspect many of you have been to other events this week and maybe other years as well, but I'll give you the full intro just because you love the sound of my voice and in case we've got a few newbies in the house, which I'm sure we do too. But the festival is all organised by my wife Laura. I'm actually Tim, despite what it says beneath my video there. And yeah, all of it's free to attend, so I hope you're enjoying it, but please do donate if you can. We've suggested £20 for the week or £5 if you're just doing one talk, and that's just per household. Don't do it twice if there's two of you watching. And if you can't donate, fine, please just do enjoy it. On the chat, it looks like everyone's got it, but just make sure you change the chat to everyone as opposed to just hosts and panelists so we can all see it. If you've got questions for David, if you've got questions for Georgie, use the Q&A function separately and we'll go through those at the end. We won't be able to keep track of everything in the chat. And if you suddenly lose your internet or the doorbell rings or you've got a friend who's not seen it, don't worry, we're recording it, so it will be on YouTube shortly. But I think it looks like numbers are stabilizing. You've heard more than enough from me, so I'm going to hand over to Georgie and I'm going to hand over to David to hear all about what they're telling us today. So enjoy. Over to you guys.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction and thank you for having us. Yeah, as you say, I'm Georgie. I was one of the organisers of the World Record ride. I'm spelling out Refugees Welcome, and obviously David here with me too. So essentially what Thighs does since 2016 is a ride from London to Athens, and we've done that 4 times up until this point. But as the pandemic sort of brought about a huge global change, and obviously we couldn't go abroad, this is what brought about the idea of doing something a bit more creative in the UK. So since 2016, the organisers Harry and Ollie were in charge of organising our big adventure from London to Athens. As you can see there, involved like a support car called Calypso, I should say van actually, because she was, yeah, a big, beautiful Calypso who helped us like the whole way through. And it involved wild camping, and it was, yeah, a crazy adventure and lots of different people joining. And then Harry and Ollie came up with a pretty cool idea to do a GPS art ride for the 2021 year. And yeah, that's where I joined to help plan and organise it. See?
And hello everyone, I'm David, and this is me and Georgie, as you can see, with one of the official, I printed out myself, world record logbooks. And yeah, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was how and why you might want to break a world record, basically. For us, it was kind of like a bit of an add-on because it sounded fun and might get us a lot more publicity. And yeah, a big part of what we do is fundraising for grassroots solidarity projects that support people on the move. So yeah, and anything we can do to get more publicity basically and try and get some more donations would be great. So the world record that we went for was the, let's see if I can remember it, the largest GPS artwork by bicycle, open brackets, team. So not only was it me and Georgie, but there were, I think 61 other people joined us on the ride, which went from the very west of the country, from Cornwall, all the way through to Kent, and pretty much everywhere in between, including some places twice, as we sort of did weird circles. The other thing that Thighs of Steel does is, as Georgie mentioned, the founders, Harry and Ollie, is sort of the organizers, and then Annie when she came on board, all women, and we are, so the ride that we did this year, in 2021, that's this year, right? Was about 2/3 women participants, and I think that's worth shouting out, because it can be a really male-dominated industry. Yeah, one of the big things about doing a world record is basically you have to pay quite a lot of money to get one of these things. So it's £500 to even just to apply, and then they send you a huge list of like conditions that you have to qualify for. You have to, like, hoops basically you have to jump through in order to get this record. So the previous team who had bothered to jump through all these hoops was a team in Egypt who cycled 761 kilometers in a heart shape for one of the heart charities out there, which is pretty rad. But the three main conditions that we had to achieve was filming for 10 minutes every hour, which is ridiculous when you're trying to cycle across the country. And we also had to make these logbooks and record what we were doing on every minute of the whole journey. Not like literally every minute, but like every minute had to be accounted for. So actually I've got one of them here. I don't know if you can see this, but that's like where we started that kind of leg, and where we finished, and the times and the distances and all sorts, and then a couple of signatures, one of which is Gordon Ramsay's. You might notice. And the other thing you have to do is separately is like a whole other witness book with 2 witnesses for every time you stop, which is just a crazy amount of admin. But the craziest of the admin was definitely the route planning, which was all of Georgie's work. So I'll pass back over to you.
Yeah, well, it was one mean feat trying to fit in Refugees Welcome across the south of England. I mean, it was also, there's a lot of planning and organisation involved, and first thing that we were trying to decipher is actually where to put the letters themselves. And we did try I did actually try drawing Refugees Welcome in quite a lot of different weird shapes across the whole of the UK. But conveniently, they actually fitted in really well on the south coast of England. And as it turns out, it's also a pretty powerful message to put on our south coast. So that's one of the reasons why they ended up being there. So
such a big F as well. Why did you do the F so big?
Yeah, it was a pretty big F. The F and the G, I think I remember being the longest letters. They took ages. So there were quite a lot of different factors planning it out. Obviously the length of it had to beat a world record, so it was in total 2,208 kilometers, which did beat the previous record pretty well. And I think that was always the hardest thing, was trying to start the letters. I remember just sort of roughly drawing on a map using sort of like a clip art sort of tool to just see how it would look on a map, and then finding the starting points near public transport links, trying to make the letters obviously on like beautiful roads and areas of natural beauty, and then trying to ensure that the letters were connected well enough so people could take on 2 letters to their own individual tours. There's a lot of things to think about actually with all of that, and I was using Komoot to plan the letters themselves. So the whole Komoot platform is used to create the interactive map to put on our website, and also I was using it as our planning tool. So it's really useful having Canute to try and decipher which of the settings was the best one to use for what we wanted to gain. So there's a cycle touring mode, there's a road cycling mode, and there's also sort of mountain biking or gravel riding mode. I think I definitely use a combination of these to try and get onto the best roads to suit the shapes of the letters. And there were definitely compromises to be made, I think, with the style of riding, and two, I think, yeah, the way it looks on the map. I think there were some ridiculous routes that David and I were cycling down into Cornwall, Devon, that just, you were so close to the other letter next to you where you had to be sort of later that day, but you had to cycle another 40k south to then go maybe 5k across and cycle another 40k up. And that was, I think, incredibly frustrating at some points when we could almost see where we needed to be later that day, but we had to go an incredibly roundabout way of getting there.
Can I just jump in and point out that this is Dartmoor, which, if you've ever cycled in Dartmoor, it's pretty tough. And we did like a full loop and then another one.
It seemed like such a good idea at the time planning it. There was definitely a discrepancy in what you can actually see on the map when you're planning it, being like, that'd be a beautiful road, it's got so many highlights on there, clicking all the highlights, being so excited about that letter, and as you're actually cycling you realize there's so many highlights because there's so many beautiful views on top of all the hills. And there's so many and so many obviously beautiful windy crazy switchback roads going up. But yeah, Dartmoor, it looked amazing in the highlights obviously, but to cycle it was pretty tough. Actually, on the next slide, David, there is all the letters lined up beautifully, as you can see. So up close, they do look a lot more wiggly and windy than they do zoomed out. Unfortunately, this is the nature of trying to make a GPS art that's yeah, both cyclable and legible. So David already mentioned that either goes around Dartmoor. Yeah, that was quite that was quite the adventure. Also, you can see on some of the other letters, the R, you have to go like an out and back from the R in there to get into Cornwall, and that was another pretty savage hill, I remember, just south of, was it like Bodmin Moor or the other different moor, sorry, I've forgotten the name of it, but yeah, there's lots of little tweaks like that we had to do. And same with the F, actually you had to go out and back along somewhere in the middle of Devon, and the top of the F actually went all the way over Exmoor, which is also beautiful, but again some pretty mean hills. So that was like one of the challenges of definitely planning. I think something else that added to this adventure, which I was not actually sure what we're going into before cycling, because obviously we had never cycled this route before, we weren't sure what to expect, but also like David and I had never really met before properly. We sort of like met on Zoom quite a few times, and I think we spent 1 or 2 days at Harry's house doing some work and planning and that sort of thing, but he'd never spent more than a day's work together. So this was like a big test of friendship and bonding at the same time as a physical challenge. And at the same time as carrying all your stuff up over the hills of Dartmoor and Exmoor and Cornwall, and obviously going through sort of own like personal battles, and also just trying to be there for each other of 2 people that I've not met. It was, yeah, quite something. And I think another one of the reasons that made this kind of challenge so unique was the fact that this was the first time Thighs could sort of give people a route to go cycle themselves. So obviously doing it as a group with on the welcome letters was great, and that was amazing how many people cycling with us, but there was a significant number of people, somewhere between 40 and 80 people, cycled letters completely by themselves on their own tours. So that was really great to watch, and you can see the letters as they were completed and uploaded pop up on our map, obviously before we did the ride itself. And it was great hearing people's stories about that as well, and how people handled and trusted us, obviously I guess me making a good route for them, and yeah, for them to go on their own independent tours too, which was really great.
Shout out to Pat from the New Forest Off-Road Club, who did the whole of the W in 1 day. Well, we did that in 2, like sensible people, but yeah, that, when I saw that, I was like, whoa, okay. Shall I move on to the next slide? Just to clear up, because I'm not sure, so the first so the whole of refugees, me and Georgie did unsupported, and with a couple of friends joining us for little bits here and there. And then for welcome, we had, that's where the 61 other people came in basically, and we had like different groups every day camping with us and riding with us. So it became, that's where Calypso came back in as well, and it became much more of like a community thing. But that first like couple of weeks, yeah, it was predominantly me and Georgie battling it out with the road, I mean, not with each other. So yeah, oh, talking of which, actual cycling. Yeah, these are just a few photos that I grabbed. It's been funny going back through the archives of all our photos that we took for the evidence for the Guinness World Record, and these were just a few that jumped out at me. Yeah, I mean, mechanicals, things going wrong. That's supposed to be an M in the top right, by the way. So that was some of the people who rode the M with us down on the southeast coast. The bottom left is the little crew who are with us doing the U and the G. So early days, back when we were like, is this gonna work? And you can see our logbooks there, and the flag, and my bugle, and the Choose Love t-shirt, which we haven't actually mentioned, but we are fundraising for Choose Love, who are a UK charity, and the way they work is basically they're like a central depot for donations, which they then redistribute to smaller grassroots organizations. It's a really efficient way of getting money to small organizations who can't necessarily set up as a charity themselves, and certainly don't have like the networks that Choose Love do in order to fundraise. So that was like a really cool way of doing it. And that's us outside Wells Cathedral, which is a beautiful spot. And coincidentally was about the point at which we broke the previous record. So we could have stopped. We could have stopped at Refug and we would have got that record. But for some reason, we carried on for another 1,500 kilometers. And then the bottom right is, us at the end, at the finish, with me showing off with my bugle, which I think by that point, I could almost play it as well. Is that fair?
I don't know, but yeah, you got sound out of it. You got more sound than anyone else, from what I remember. Bugle spots, many a bugle spot there was.
Yeah. So yeah, shout out to all the people who took part. And this final day, when we finished in Dover, I think we were trying to add it up earlier, but I think there were probably about 30 people in total, maybe, doing the ride, some of which did the whole of the E, which was about 140 kilometers on the hottest day since the sun first made heat, I think. It was crazy. There were definitely moments where I was really intimidated before we left that day. I genuinely wasn't sure whether I was capable of doing this. It's a long way to cycle, and that part of the UK, sort of the very southeast corner of Kent, is pretty hilly. There's lovely flat bit to start, and then it starts to get hilly through as you go through the South Downs, and as well, like having the pressure of managing this. You know, we've done 2,000 kilometers. Like, it all comes down to this one day. If we don't finish this, then we've got like this record kind of like crumbles before your eyes. Like, what would happen if we can't make it, you know? But we did, spoiler. It was the first time that I'd had coffee in my life, though. And that got me round, basically.
Thank God for the woman at the Tickled Trout for that.
Yeah. We started and finished. We started at the Tickled Trout. I can't remember. Do you remember the name of the village?
No, I don't. A very small village in Kent.
Yeah, right. Basically,
the starting point
at the E, where you'd draw an E. So it was there, and then what was great was we could start there, and they put on free tea and coffee, and a lovely local woman made us cake, and it was just a beautiful way to start. And then we did a loop, so we could come back there and sort of restock and resupply, and then do the last little bit the last bit down to Dover for the finish. So it was actually, there were some points where the weird route really worked for us, and that was really one of them. And yeah, that actually brings us quite nicely on to speaking to strangers, which was a big part of what we did, basically, as a result of taking on a world record. Because as I mentioned before, you have to account for every minute that you're doing the attempt, and you have to get witnesses, and that means going up to strangers, and basically we developed this spiel, basically. And I don't know if do you remember like the phrasing that we got for it?
I think we opened with, we are doing a world record breaking bike ride.
Lure them in.
Lure them in. World record breaking, obviously being, the first grabbing attention point. And then we definitely went into more detail when people obviously asked what was our record breaking. We're like, well, it's a GPS art one, and then obviously then we've gone into more detail. Then we get we're fundraising for refugees, or at least grassroots projects through Trees Love. And I think that's something that we kind of got into a really good flow of it, that maybe like a quarter of the way through, when we had like our spiel nailed, because it got people's attention. And sometimes maybe we were quite tentative about where we were in the world and what we were trying to, the cause we're trying to fundraise for may or may not have got such a good reception. I think maybe at some points I was a bit skeptical about people being like really supportive of it, and I think 99.9% of people that we met were just so enthusiastic, and it was amazing to like just kind of see that people are actually very supportive of the cause we're fundraising for. And we had so many cash donations on the road as well. I think one of the ones I remember is at Bodmin train station, where they have that old kind of historic train, and there's this quite a young boy working in the cafe, and he made a point of coming out of the cafe to give us like a £10, and I think he's one of our first cash donations, so it was on the first day.
Straight out of the till.
Probably straight out the till, who knows, but he still made that effort to give the £10 donation. And then I think that's real, like every time we met someone amazing on the road, it was just a real uplift and really made it feel like this cause is so important and it's really worthwhile us doing this.
And it was like, you've got to remember as well that it was straight out of COVID, so like even just approaching a stranger on the street, like how responsive are they going to be to like these weirdo cyclists coming up to them, but then also just it was just such a lesson in I mean, I'm sure lots of people here are cycle tourers and are super used to, the generosity of strangers and so on. But it was such a lesson that, the stuff that you hear in the newspapers, on the news, like tabloid press and things like that, like what the headlines say that people think really doesn't align with what people actually think, which is, just such a great lesson to learn. And like you say, the generosity of people was just lovely. I think we kept a little tally of cash donations. So now actually live at the Cycle Touring Festival 2023, we can announce the most generous county in the south of England is, do you remember?
Wiltshire.
Yeah, your home turf.
Just saying.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact amount, but I remember as soon as we entered Wiltshire, my front gear cable just snapped. Luckily, like I noticed it like around our lunch time. It was always lunchtime, and we found this cricket ground where we sort of tried to fix it and stuff, and had a bit of food, and then went and spoke to the people who were watching the cricket. And there couldn't have been like a more like dubious crowd. Like, I don't know, like from my prejudices anyway, it's like you know, small town, like south of England, watching cricket, maybe not so into like migration and things. But when we sort of like gave them the spiel and stuff, like this guy didn't even like really engage with it, or so I thought. And then he got his wallet out and was like, just like without a word, even just like, so yeah, like a real lesson for my own like judgments of people as well. And you've just got to, yeah, just got to say your thing and trust in people's kindness. So yeah, it's lovely. I should explain the people or places on the photo actually, because this is just really weird and random. But the guy on the left is the mayor of Glastonbury, who it turns out is a total baller. Yeah, he welcomed us into his city formally. And he had his full-on chain and everything, and you can see he's wearing one of our stickers on the right there. And he took us to the pub and he bought Georgie a Guinness and me a cup of tea and signed our logbook and everything. And that was just a really, yeah, just a really memorable moment. And then he just regaled us with stories from the town hall and the politics in Glastonbury. It was just such a surreal moment, having just broken the record, as I mentioned earlier, through Wells. It was just like, this is wonderful. And then on the right is the Polterman's Arms in Exmoor, where we just, I think you'd run out of water or something up there, top of a massive hill, and this pub looked completely closed. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning or something, and we just knocked on the door and like, is any chance of a, and this basically this landlord came out, and he was dressed like a pirate, right?
Yes, he was.
And again, another massive character. Like, he was telling us stories about like how he'd run for like local, he'd run for member of parliament for that constituency. And that's a mural of Hunter S. Thompson on the wall there. And it says, if you're going to be crazy, you have to get paid for it, or else you'll be locked up. That suited the pub perfectly. So yeah, I just loved the way that this Guinness World Record attempt and the logbook and the witnesses and everything forced us to just approach random people, and the adventures that you get in there. It was just a completely different experience to other experiences I've had cycle touring, which, I mean, my first tours, I was terrified to speak to anyone. But probably the most embarrassing of these stranger encounters was it was only about 20 kilometers into the whole thing. We were cycling in Cornwall on like a lovely stretch of former railway track, and the woman we were cycling with, Naomi, we'd stopped at a cafe, and she was just like, I think that's Gordon Ramsay. And I wasn't really sure. I don't really know the guy, but he's quite distinctive, I'd say. And so I don't really know how to approach famous people, but I can now tell you that famous people don't want to be approached in a loud voice in a public place going, "You Gordon Ramsay!" But once he'd sort of quietened us down a little bit, he signed our logbook and got on with his bike ride. We were going in opposite directions, otherwise I'm sure he would have contributed some miles. But yeah, in future, be less embarrassing when you approach famous people. Yeah, have you got any other crazy speaking to strangers stories?
Crazy strangers. I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but obviously there was a big van fiasco that happened where it broke down on my birthday. I think I was in a cafe actually when it happened, and we were just hanging out trying to find sandwiches for later on, and then we got a call from you saying, "Oh, the van's broken down."
Yeah. So this was on the O, right?
It was on the
O
O.
of welcome. So at this
Yeah.
point, Georgie was leading a bunch of cyclists and I was in the van, and it was Georgie's birthday, so she got to cycle and I was going to make her like this great dinner, and her partner was coming down to meet us as well, and it was going to be lovely. And at about 9 a.m. on like a dual carriageway outside Brighton, I put my foot on the clutch and it just went. It was, yeah, never had anything like it. Yeah, but luckily we were rescued by a friend, Bobby, who's an absolute dream, and he lent us his van. And apart from not knowing how to reverse it, which ended up with me being stuck across a road, unable to do a 3-point turn. That was embarrassing. Just about managed to get to Georgie's birthday party in time for me and her partner to rustle up some spaghetti and sing happy birthday with a what are those,
Colin
like
Caterpillar
Colin
cake.
Caterpillar, that's the word, with a Colin the Caterpillar.
Good old Colin.
Yeah. And yeah, that evening, like as well, your partner Scott had rescued our host's hay bales. Like their hay stack was collapsing, so it was a bit of an eventful day all in all. But
Scott's
yeah,
round of kindness.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, meant to talk of hosts. We obviously had to stay in places along the way, and Georgie organised all that as well.
Yeah, we did actually. So this is, well, it was quite a lot of work leading up to the ride. It's probably a good like 2 to 3 months I spent looking for hosts. I mean, that might be an exaggeration. It might be more like 2 months, but fitting in obviously the ride itself into letters that made sense cycling wise as well as like literally wise. It was quite hard. And then obviously finding accommodation on the way in the UK. So what Pfizer Steel usually do is wild camp when we reach Europe, because lots of areas of Europe are available for camping, and that means we leave no trace. We have everything with us. So we are cooking pots and pans, and the van team will do a big meal at the end of the day when the cyclists arrive at camp after finding obviously a suitable spot. Obviously in the UK that's a bit different. So I spent a lot of time kind of trawling through all of the different like websites you can use to try and find hosts for cycle tours. So I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of Warm Showers. That was a really good platform for finding hosts. So I messaged probably hundreds of people on Warm Showers in all sorts of different locations, which were roughly near route or quite a lot of the time actually en route. I don't think we ended up having to go that far out of our way to find or to get to hosts. I mean, every so often, maybe a mile or two, but it was actually amazing how many hosts are on Warm Showers in the south of England. So I've used the platform quite a few times abroad, sort of mainly in the States and New Zealand, but I've never tried it that much in the UK. So I was really surprised, and like, also it was great how much response we had from hosts. And also again, it was a COVID year, so I was a bit dubious about whether people would want to host us. So yeah, we did actually find that was a really good way of finding hosts. And the other platforms I used was Workaway. So there was a lot of difference in trying to find accommodation for just sort of me and David, or me and David plus a couple of friends. That was quite easy going. It was Warm Showers is a really great platform for that. But for a big group of cyclists, trying to find a wild camping spot or camping on someone's land, that meant I had to get a bit more creative in looking for accommodation. So for up to 17 or 18 people, it was using Workaway, which was sort of contacting people who lived on farms and asking if we could maybe camp in a corner of their field somewhere, or even just calling up farmers. Sounds quite strange, literally just Googling areas, looking on Google Maps and sort of just like dropping pins and looking for farms and their numbers and calling people. I spoke to some really lovely people actually who were just really like, wow, okay, yeah, sure, why not? I would happily let us camp on a corner of their land. And I come from a farming family, and that's something that I was a bit surprised about, because I wonder what my dad would say if some random stranger called him to ask about 17 cyclists camping on his land. He might be up for it, I'm not sure. And then also another thing was Scout campgrounds, which was really great as well. That's a lovely place in sort of near Southampton, Portsmouth way. I think it might be, it's one of the E's. So I remember the country in terms of
Winchester.
letters of this ride. But yeah, the South Downs E.
Winchester it was.
Winchester, okay, yeah, it's around that area. There's a really wonderful scout campground that let us camp there for free. So it's sort of amalgamating all these different platforms and obviously contacting people via email and WhatsApp and organising the dates. And that's one of the things that kept me and David on this quite tight schedule, was we had to get to certain places by certain dates so we'd have somewhere to stay. And so we'd also, and especially we had a group of cyclists, because with a group of cyclists we'd have to meet a certain group of cyclists on a certain date. So we had to make sure these letters were sort of happening on schedule, which always can be a bit of a challenge. And I think overall, from what all are taken back from this one trip, is that the UK is an amazing place to cycle tour, not only for the terrain and like obviously beautiful scenery, especially obviously on the south coast. It was like a real eye-opener to really appreciate this area of the UK, but also how generous and warm and welcoming people can be in the UK as well. I think I might have lost a bit of faith in that too. I've never really tested it out that much. Obviously, being from like the UK, you don't normally travel as much on a shoestring perhaps. And I think actually just, yeah, meeting people in this way and by cycling and staying with hosts, I think it's just a really wonderful way to experience the country. And so again, we were just sort of really, yeah, a lot of generosity was given to us in all sorts of different ways. I think a few of my favourite camps was on these pictures, as you can see. So the top left-hand corner is a big yurt or big bell tent. And that was such a beautiful place near Sidmouth. We stayed with our hosts called John and Laura, which also have well, in case you're interested, they have an Airbnb on their own grounds. This is sort of like a luxury but eco campsite basically that we're allowed to stay at. And not only did we arrive as some scraggly, sweaty, deranged cyclists after this really hot day cycling in Dorset, but they had made us an amazing dinner and a homemade tiramisu, which just sort of filled my heart, and it must have filled David's heart as well, because tiramisu was one of those things. It was sort of a yeah, can I say a motif of our trip. I think there was 5 tiramisus overall. David can confirm, I think you were the one counting. We had, yeah, some amazing tiramisus, but that was the best one I've ever had in my life, especially after a full day of cycling the Dorset hills. It was exactly what I couldn't have dreamed of anything better, to be honest. And there was the one below, which is me coming out of a tiny little Wendy house. This was one of our hosts in Dartmoor, actually, which was again really amazing. It's a very cute little Wendy house that we camped in someone's garden. And then, yeah, on the left-hand side there is that was a platform that we stayed at, which is a little cyclist bothy, is what I would like to call it. That was, I think, on one of the first days of the U. Can you correct me if I'm wrong, David?
Yeah. So Devon, I guess.
Devon, yeah,
East Devon.
East Devon. And this is great. I think it's a community made shelter for cyclists to stay at, and it's meant to be a place for us to camp safely. And
yeah, so cool. If any of you have any land, put one. It's basically a bus shelter. Put one of these in there and just put it on. Did you find it on Warm Showers, or was it just on Google Maps?
It wasn't Google Maps, no. It was mentioned on some cycling forum I was reading. I think it was maybe mentioned on Komoot, actually, and then I researched it on Google after that. Yeah,
it was
genius, really good.
So simple.
It's so simple.
Yeah,
super simple. And obviously with all this sort of organization, there's always things that sort of go wrong, or maybe like, you know, hosts forget they're hosting you or can't confirm that they're hosting you, and then you have to maybe think on the spot. And this happened actually on the first day of us riding with a group of cyclists up on the W in the New Forest. And it was probably partly my organisation and planning that was maybe, you know, you don't back up messages sometimes, or you haven't researched enough. And this happened, with a house that we were going to stay at in a New Forest, and I arrived and it ended up being just a bit of not enough land really for us to camp on. And I was in this sort of housing complex with the gate, and I ended up getting locked inside in the gate, and there was like a bit of a panicky moment. And then I was like on the phone to another warm showers host in the area, was just like calling them and seeing if they would be able to host us at a moment's notice, and met the most
Didn't you have to
amazing
climb
people.
over the gate to escape?
I did,
There
yeah. I
wasn't
climbed over the gate to
reception in the
open it
compound.
I climbed over the gate to then let myself out from the outside. So I had the van with me, obviously, and I had to just, there was a code to get in, but the code wasn't working to get out. So I had to go let myself in again out of the van to then, yeah, get the van out of this place. It was, I mean, I probably was a sweaty and stressed mess at that point, but it was all good. Got to a new host just in time. And Christian and Phoebe and their kids that hosted us in the New Forest were the most wonderful humans in the entire world, especially that day. I don't know if I could have even met any better human that day to host us. And they had a wonderful field. And yeah, their kids came out and gave us lots of blackberries, which was really cute. And yeah, we actually had circle time with them as well, which was just a really lovely thing, that we sort of have a circle and chat about our day at the end of the day, and they joined us for that. And I think it was really lovely. Also, David, you can confirm you've seen them since, haven't you, for other rides?
Yeah. They're still absolute diamonds. We love them.
We'll be friends for life.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Amazing. I just want to say something about press, because it turns out this is where there's a bit of a twist in the tale. Thighs of Steel do not have a Guinness World Record. Basically, there's so much admin and so many, great rides to plan and like keep us going into the future, and so many better things to be doing than making a 10 minutes an hour video that covers 29 days of cycling. Like, it would have been, I've forgotten the exact numbers now, but it would have been like a 9-hour film. Even if we'd managed to actually do all that recording, which of course we couldn't because we were cycling, god damn it. But it turns out the Guinness World Records, no one follows up whether you've actually got them or not. So it basically did the job for us. Like, it got all this press, including in the Sun, which was bizarre, because they're not known for their support of refugees, but they actually did a very nice, as you can see in the top left, a very nice photo and headline and a little write-up. So yeah, our Guinness World Record thing ended up being a bit of a ruse, a bit of a Trojan horse that got us a lot of publicity for a good cause, and got a lot of donations as well. So yeah, but weird seeing yourselves pop up on people's BBC News feeds and things like that. So we're very grateful to Guinness for existing, and taking our money for the application and then not chasing us for I don't know, fraudulent use of the ruse. But the main thing was, like I said, about raising money. So we ended up raising £81,428 for Choose Love. And you can see there was 7 different organizations received that money. And our focus, because the ride is spelling out refugees welcome, and our focus was very much on the UK. The focus of where the money went was also on organizations that offer a warm welcome, that we think everyone deserves, who is forced to leave their homes, whatever the reason for that. So most of these organizations are based in the UK, as you can see, in Coventry, London, and then there's a couple who are also based in Greece, which at the time, and still, to be honest, are a difficult moment, obviously, with the numbers of people passing through and the state of the economy and all the things that I'm sure you're aware of yourselves. So yeah, and the other part of the impact, which is sort of badly represented by this photo of me on the right, with my bugle and using the back pocket of my cycling jersey to hold a bottle of champagne, I think, or cava, prosecco maybe. That was right at the finish, and I'm chatting to a woman who signed off the logbook on the final moment of arrival, and yeah, she was representing a network of charities across the south of England, who work supporting refugees and asylum seekers. And it's just to say that all those people that we met, all the cyclists, the 60 odd cyclists who came with us, the 80 or so who did it on their own, all the people who saw it in the news, all of this stuff is just like slowly bringing people yeah, into this idea of solidarity. And that's what Thighs of Steel is really about, is about building this community and this movement for recognition that we're all humans, basically. And yeah, that's why we ride. So what happened next?
Well, thanks to restrictions being lifted, we were up to our old tricks. But this time, so this was last year in 2022, we cycled from Glasgow to Athens. So a little bit of a twist in the traditional London to Athens ride. And yeah, great having a week in the UK as well. So I think up to 93 cyclists took part last year, which would value about 5,500 kilometers. It's a pretty long way. And overall, we fundraised £114,000 for mass action, which yeah, was amazing. I think it's a Mass Action are currently our partners who we fundraise for. So similar to what they do at Choose Love, is they distribute funds to small grassroots organisations in both Greece and in the UK. So essentially this is going to be what happens in 2023 as well. We're doing a similar route, but 2023 we're going to be going through Switzerland as well, which will be very exciting. If you want to join us for a week on the ride, please go to our website. We've got early bird sign-ups happening right now, which means you get first dibs on places on weeks, and sign-ups opening on 17th of February for the early birds. So yeah, go to thighsofsteel.com and all the details are there. And if you want to sign up, then it would be amazing to see some of you on our 2023 ride.
Yeah, just to be clear, you don't have to cycle 5,500 kilometers. None of us actually do that. It's broken down into week-long stages, and you can sort of see that vaguely. So like the first week is Glasgow to Bristol, for example. There's 8 of these weeks to choose from. So yeah, you can pick a week that suits your vibe, you know, and maybe you're a Bristol to Paris kind of person, maybe you're a Albania, Macedonia kind of person. There's something for everyone, we think. Yeah, and that's the end of our talk. Thanks for having us. And if anyone's got any questions, we're here.
Thank you very much. That was ace. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. We've had hundreds of talks over the years about cycle touring, but it's great to have one that's still completely novel. Any other talk we've had that was GPS based had a lot more information about USB connections and GPX files, was a very different style. So this was great, and I checked the time. It was at least 15 minutes before you actually started talking about bikes, which is genuinely a good thing at the end of a week of bike talks. It's really nice to have that change. And as ever, I enjoyed the fact that the kindness of strangers came through with you guys, as it so often does in the talks that we hear. But as you said, even on what you might think of as a polarizing topic, and they often say, avoid talking about politics, but clearly that's not always right. And yeah, great that even the Sun picked it up with a slightly poor pun, but
I know, right?
Nonetheless,
disappointing for their standards.
Yeah, you'd expect more from them, but really great. And also that my mind was going, but that shelter, the Bampton Cyclist Shelter, I'm sure Joe is a festival attendee. I'm
no way.
Yeah, I wish I just wish Laura was here hosting. Lots of you probably do, but because she would know. But I'm sure I'm sure he is, because I remember thinking that looked familiar, and someone kept saying, "Oh, you've got to tell everybody about it." So it's great that you found it completely independently and liked it too. So no, that's great. Right, I'll do a couple of questions for you, if I may.
Yeah.
Did I miss the bit where you explained why you were carrying a bugle, David?
One
that you couldn't play?
No, not really. It's just a bit of a laugh, basically. But I'd picked it up the year before when I'd cycled around the south coast of Britain just for fun after lockdown, and ended up at a mock. It sounds really morbid, but the mock funeral of a friend, and I needed, like, someone was dressed up in a badger costume and someone was the priest and all this stuff, and I needed a thing. So we went around the charity shops of Hastings and I got myself a bugle that I couldn't play, and I sort of followed the coffin as it processed through the woods, playing my bugle. And since then it's come on every bike ride with me.
Right, good. I'm not sure that was an explanation. I've come up with more questions as I started, but I enjoyed it. So no, that's good. I like it. But then all this admin for the world record. We're talking about a Guinness World Record here, are we?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Just they've clearly gone commercial, because I did a cycling world record a few years ago, and it was not of this scale, but all I had to do was get one signature a day. That was it. I kept a log, but no one I just put my own numbers in that log. I got caught out because apparently I was on a tour. It was a distance record, and I stopped to my parents. Apparently, if you go home, the record stops. But no, they've clicked. Yeah. That sounds awful. Really,
I mean,
really
I do sometimes think, is it worth just sending them what I've got and seeing what happens? But I've got a lot of work. I've got a lot of admin to do. We've got a ride to plan.
I think you're right. Like you said, I saw one of the headlines saying, into the record books, and that's it. Everyone, as far as the world's concerned, it's done, and you've raised the money, you've done the trip. And
yeah, it's also worth saying that last summer, a group of people did something twice the size across Europe, I think.
Okay.
So actually, in our heads, and I think, Georgie, you found something in the Czech Republic where they'd already done one bigger than ours anyway. So it's like, what does it mean to have a Guinness World Record?
Yeah, absolutely fair. One of the questions came in from Rob in the audience. He did how many days? How long did it take in total? Didn't clock.
29 days, I think it was, of cycling. We had with a Guinness World Record, you're allowed up to a week off in any point between cycling bits, and I think we had 3 days off in the middle after refugees.
In Bournemouth, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, which was needed.
Probably needed just from getting signatures and filming yourself. So someone else who's listening in, apart from saying that it's awesome, which there's a lot of love for you on the chat. I'll send you the chat afterwards. You might not see it now, but lots of positive comments coming in. Are there any plans for a book? Someone's asking. Have you ever? Is that on your list?
David, you are a writer.
No. I am a writer, though. If you want to read it, I wrote some stuff about it at the time. That's on davidcharles.info. I should just plug my stuff, shouldn't I?
Definitely, I'm typing it in now. Davidcharles.
Oh, great. Yeah, davidcharles.info. There's some stuff up on there. Yeah. I should what I can also put in the chat actually is thighsofsteel.com/Athens 2023 for this year, if anyone wants to join us.
Great, yeah, that's really good. Well, I'll see if Laura can put that on the social media.
Oh, brilliant, thank you. Lovely.
Listen, that was ace. Thank you very much. Really different. Really. I mean, interesting in itself, but doing it for such a worthy cause and a positive message. I think lots of cycle touring, there's positive messages that go around one another about the kindness of strangers, but actually doing it as explicitly an outward message is really nice, really good. So yeah, good on you for doing it, and sticking with all the admin. And I can't imagine the meticulousness of having to plan that route, Georgie. So
oh yeah. I mean, yeah, Georgie did like the lion's share of all the admin like before the trip even began.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Yeah, the logistical jigsaw was epic.
I didn't have the world record to deal with though. That was
well, so one little funny story was when we so you're supposed to get film footage of the moment you surpass the previous record, and I'm quite good at spreadsheets and maths, but like my brain was so addled by like this week straight of the hardest cycling I've ever done in my life through Cornwall and Devon. Like every time I added up the cumulative kilometers, it came out differently. So I think we missed the point at which we passed the record at least 3 times. Yeah. So I think that was the moment where I was like, oh, what is a record?
And are you supposed to film like yourself and what you're seeing, or are you supposed to film like your odometer as it clicks over? Not like that.
Probably both. Like so every time we stopped, Georgie would film like a little bit where you'd take a film of the GPS and then like where you were, and you were supposed to do it at landmarks, but like most of the time when you stop, it's not at a landmark because it's like a bench somewhere or whatever. So it's like, is that a street sign? Does that count as a landmark? And it's just like, we're on a schedule. We don't have time for like, I don't know, cycling up the Hardy Monument or something in the middle of Dorset. Like, we don't have time for this stuff.
I love it. It might be you'd send it in and they'd be like, and the Guinness World Records would be like, wow, no one's ever actually followed all of these rules before.
I know.
Really meticulous.
Yeah, I am quite conscientious, and it is my downfall at times. But
yeah, well, you spelled out a word with your bike, so I think the conscientiousness for both of you paid off there. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Right, brilliant. Thank you very much, both. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in. Just one last talk this evening, 8 o'clock, cycling east at 60, which sounds fantastic. So please do dial in for anyone who's still around. But a huge thank you to David, huge thank you to Georgie, and thank you to everyone for dialing in. Goodbye and see you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.